My why is because I believe every single person deserves to be heard. That every single person has greatness within them.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Master Your Life. I am Kate McKay and I am absolutely thrilled that you've joined us here today. I am extremely fortunate that I've had my first duo, a father and son team, and I'm grateful for this day. I have Richard Walsh and his incredible son, D'Angelo Walsh, here with me today. Welcome, men. I'm glad to have you here.
Good to be here, Kate.
You guests, I'm going to make sure I put the link below. I've had Richard as a guest, and he is certainly an inspiration for me. And we had many conversations before and after our recording, just because we share similar passion in helping other people. And his son, D'Angelo, came up a few times, and he's been going through some grind. And I would love it, Richard, if you would just introduce D'Angelo to our audience, and we can go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. That's great. D'Angelo Walsh, my son, he's been in the Marine Corps about a year now. 0311 MSG, which is Marine Corps Security Guard. So they guard embassies around the world, and the president, White House, Camp David, all that cool stuff. So been about a year. He's been through the whole process, and it's been really amazing to watch. So here he is to share a little bit about that journey, the whole journey, from when he was young to now, and looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah. So you, D'Angelo, if you don't mind just sharing with us a little bit about what was your childhood like?
My childhood, well, it was a boy's childhood. A lot different than maybe kids are brought up today with their tablets and stuff. A lot more stick fighting, playing toy soldier in the backyard with my brothers. I have 3 other brothers. So always doing something fun with them outside, being like little pyromaniacs, lighting something on fire or digging trenches in the backyard. A lot of trenches, a lot of holes. I remember for Christmas, we'd always ask for something military related or Wild West, like usually something with guns. We'd go in the backyard, pretend to shoot at each other and stuff like that. Just using our imaginations and such. Just kind of like being boys, which I think I'm lucky that I had that childhood. I think many boys should have similar childhoods instead of just being on video games all day like the newer generation. But,
Yeah,
but I'm lucky.
So did you find that to be true in particular with like other kids your age, and maybe their parents having a bias against the way that you played? Because culturally, it seems like thankfully we're moving back to that a little bit, but there's such a bias against boys being what they consider violent, but it's just like aggressive, fun play for boys.
Yeah. My friends growing up, I did a lot of sports and I was also homeschooled. So I was around very like-minded people. They'd come over, we'd either play guns, do something like with airsoft, play, like I said, a lot of sports, ultimate frisbee, football in the backyard, stuff like that. And I ran track and field for a number of years along cross country. So I was a very active kid, but
did you want to be in the military when you grew up? Was that something for you? Because I usually ask, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was that for you?
Well, pretty much my mind was basically made up about the military as soon as I was like 7 or something. Somewhere around there, I'm like, well, it's kind of cool. I like being with my brothers. I like pretending to sling lead. Like, why not do that in real life? So it's kind of always been the path that my life was on, being athletic in that sense, probably for the future of pursuing a military career.
What do you think about the fact of the way that your dad functions in life? Like, how has that influenced you? Because your dad's unusual too, right?
Yes.
He's not like other dads. He's a strange one.
He most definitely is. My father was not just my father, but a real mentor and a massive influence in my life, coaching me basically through, I'd say, every season of my life so far. Huge influence. Part of why I wanted to be in the Marine Corps, because a lot of stuff I did including because I boxed later in my life too. When I was a kid, was to be more like my father. I like my father, so maybe I should try the things that he's done because he's a strong role model that I want to implement or be similar as a kid growing up. So a lot of things I did was follow that path, and it hasn't really led me astray so far. I feel like every kid should look up to their father to be like him, assuming he's an honorable man. That is a good role model. So
it's huge. I did this. I wrote a book called Claim Your Inner Warrior for Men. And I interviewed like 28 guys, all different ages. And I asked that question specifically, was your dad a role model? And who was your role model? And not one man out of that 28 said their dad. And if they said their dad, it was because I was not going to be like him. He role modeled what not to be. Isn't that wild? I was like, that is so depressing. And then the second thing, a lot of the guys had coaches, but not very many of the men had strong role models in their life. And these guys were successful. It wasn't like they were like hobos. They were successful dudes, but they didn't have that. So, Richard, I'm going to ask you a question in regards to that. How difficult was it for you to parent the way you parent in a society that is soft?
Well, I'm pretty good at excluding a lot of stuff around me. So I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So my thing was really about just let me do it the way I want to do it, because I don't care what other people think. I kind of got way past that a long time ago. And I knew what I wanted the outcome to be. So for me, it was really focusing on that and making sure that my children had the influence I want to give them. I didn't want this, I'm going to call it the state raising them. So we didn't do the public school thing. We did homeschooled. So I could have that influence, whether it's fitness or it's education and reading and writing and critical thinking. I want to put all that together to give them the highest probability for success. I think that's what it really was.
So who helped you develop that in you? Was your dad that?
My dad was a really hard worker. He worked a lot, had a lot of integrity and stuff like that. So I think that was, from a role model sense, there was that. I had some other influences outside of that. But I really developed myself. And I don't mean I'm like taking credit. I'm just saying that to me, that was the way to be. So I was going to move in that direction because it just resonated with me. So I followed that path. I pretty much moved out of the house at 16, 17. I went to the Marine Corps at 17. And so a lot of the foundation I had really got honed from that point on.
So you defined that as I was going to be different than, or that I was here to create a unique path?
Yeah, I really wanted to challenge myself in a way that most people wouldn't, right? So I was like, the Marine Corps I tried to join when I was like 13. And then I tried to get when I was 17. Got in the second time. But I really wanted to take that path that was so difficult. And I learned to enjoy the suffering aspect of it, then get out of the Marine Corps and started boxing, right? Became a champion boxer and then did the martial arts thing, got a black belt and building my business and just doing a lot of hard things. So it kind of it's still honing that person, you know what I mean? So when I see my son, all my kids, I have 4 boys and 2 girls, watching them develop is just that, just trying to be the best role model I could. Far from perfect, Kate, far from perfect, And one caveat, when D'Angelo talked about trenches and stuff like in the backyard, I dug those with a pick 85 feet.
I helped a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I think he made up for it recently, though. Didn't you?
Yeah.
Didn't you have to dig some holes recently?
Yeah, a few. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Payback. Totally.
Yeah, a little bit.
So what is it that you want younger people to know, D'Angelo? Because you look around, you're in your friend group, but growing up, you saw a lot of people that weren't like you, right? Where's the problem? What's the problem?
I think there's a lot of distractions in this world now, like a lot. A lot of perversions, a lot of things that you should not be doing. But I feel like for starters, you should just choose a path to explore first. I know a lot of people are, their mind is like, so it's a lot to process at once. Like kids at a young age, they go through school and they're always asked, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with your life? How about you just let them figure out life first?
Mm.
Let them just experience it before we're like, because there's such a big push. Like even when you go to high school, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, you don't have to decide that immediately. I mean, you can live some life before you actually figure out what you want to do just a little bit. But I feel like physical fitness is definitely one. Being active, maybe having a little bit of a mind of a poet, getting some literature, because there's a lot of cool things out there. I mean, in history, great poets. I've enjoyed a lot of film watching recently, and just getting right spiritually too, you know. And I forget who said the quote, but I know there's a lifestyle that you should live. It should be, you should have a body of an athlete, mind of a stoic, spirit of a warrior. I feel if you follow a path like that, it's hard to really stray, run astray.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome. Richard, what do you think of that?
I like it. I like it. I think he's right. I think this whole what are you going to do thing is dumbest question to ask any 13, 14-year-old, 10-year-old. In the day you're a kid, I'll be a fireman. I'm going to be a policeman. That was like the two things, well, because that's all they know. But if you think about just that, the nobility of those two things that most kids wanted to be, most boys, okay, we'll say that's what they wanted to be. And it's very different. It's very convoluted today. And I'll give you a cool example. So D'Angelo and I would work out on this heavy bag at the Y, and it's on the track. It's in the corner. So people are walking. They're walking with their kids. It's really funny. Like if someone was walking ahead, a little boy, like he's 3 or 4, the kid would just stop with these wide eyes and watch us hit the bag, and work out. Just be enamored. Little girls, same age, wouldn't even look. They just keep going, right?
I would look.
I know you would. But, and it just, I tell people this because, like, there it is. No one told them to. There's no influence. It's just that's what's in them, right? That's
100%.
a little boy, right? That hitting that bag, exerting that force, doing that thing, making some noise was like, that's it. So I love the analogy of it. But I agree with him. I think you have to really discover life on your own. You have to do those hard things. Right? Challenge yourself, push yourself, get out there, see what's out there, read, like he's saying, you really got to explore, and you can do that through books. It's a great way to do it, as well as going out in the world and doing things too. So, I think it's really important that people find their own path.
I do too. I think it's important to ask the question of who do you want to be? Like, and really thinking about more as just like the characters of the beingness of who you are, and how do you want people to perceive you? We're in charge of that. And I think a lot of people just give it up to how do people see me? Like that's important for them. And they don't look, they're afraid, I think, of looking within. I also think that they don't know how. When we're looking at 90% of the population actually don't do any reflective work, psychologically or spiritually. It's pretty shocking. So D'Angelo, do you have some suggestions on ways that people can break through and do the hard?
Well, first you got to find something you're interested in. And by doing that, you got to actually do things that you're interested in. Don't be afraid to like what other people say, within reason, of course. Don't just do whatever you want and go absolutely crazy. But if you're interested in something, don't be afraid to do it. Like, even if you might get like funny looks, or your parents are like, are you sure? Well, yeah, I'm interested in doing this, even though you may want me to do this instead. I want to walk down this path and discover it. Like, my mother wasn't a huge fan of me boxing at all, but
Well, because you're such a pretty face.
Yeah. Well, I
Yes.
wanted to do it and I did it. And a lot of things came out of that. But I feel like to really get that mindset, first of all, yes, if you find something you really, really want to do, it's going to consume you. You need to find something that you're obsessed with because it's going to consume your life for a while. And there may be a little bit of unbalance.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But within
The biggest
reason,
illusion, I think, honestly, balance. People think they want balance, and it's total BS. It's like you're not going to ask Elon Musk if he's balanced. Like every day when you were in training, people are going to be like, "Hi, are you feeling balanced?"
not at all.
No.
Like I remember even during the summertime when I was training, my friends would always ask me to hang out. And I'd be like, sorry, I'm training. They're like, all day? Yeah, all day. There's also some sacrifice to that because your life will be a little unbalanced. You'll be consumed with whatever you're doing. And I think it's a really great feeling when you actually find something you really want to do and that grasp it has on you and you're driven to do so. I think every human being should experience that at least once in their lives of something they really want to do and they're driven to do it because it's an amazing fulfillment.
Why don't people do that? What do you think it is that people don't want to touch into that?
They're probably scared. Like you said, how other people will perceive them. They might lose a few friends. People may not like them as much. It may be different out of the norm. Of course, you should care about how others perceive you to an extent. But at the same time, if you're working on yourself, it's about you doing what you want to do, So at a certain point, I don't really care what other people think of me. I care about doing what I want to do, what I want to accomplish in life.
That's so uniquely clear, and it's very similar to your dad. Like I'm like, there is some beat inside of you, some fire that is very similar, and it's pretty freaking amazing. And so when you tap into that, how do you experience that, D'Angelo? When you tap in, when you grasp onto that consumption?
Well, sometimes it can be a bit lonely, a bit dark, but sometimes that's where you need to be at in your own mind. Because when you're in your own mind by yourself, that's when you can actually figure things out. Because a lot of people now, I hate to say it, they just don't think. Like They refuse to have, I don't know why, they refuse to have conversations solely with themselves. I don't know, maybe it's the phone, maybe they're out doing something, so many distractions in the world. But I feel like if you actually sit down with yourself, and the way I did it was when I was running. Like I absolutely hated running. I loved it when I was a kid. I loved it so much when I was a kid, but later on in life, I just really did not like it. But I forced myself to do it because I needed to run team for boxing to get better, more stamina, but I hated it. And in those moments when I was faltering or when it was cold, I ran the cold a lot. When it was cold or too hot to run or when I didn't feel like it, I'd still go out anyways. In those dark moments when I just wanted to give up, I'd have that real conversation with myself. Do you want to run? You don't have to. Do you want to box? That's when the cogs in your mind really start moving. You start questioning what you actually want in life. So I feel like you should get to a place in your mind where things actually do come clear and you're actually asking yourself the hard questions of, do I want to do this? How badly do I want this?
It's like you do. I love that you said that you do have to go into the darkness, it's like Goggins calls it the dungeon, But I think in our culture so much, and I think it's also been, I'm going to say this and sounds weird, but it's like the feminization that growth is going to happen when you do your healing and when you learn to love yourself and all of this languaging that I'm like, that doesn't get me fired up to do anything. And so part of it is like, no, you got to go into the darkness. And imagine being a woman, my age saying, no, you got to go into the dungeon. But our culture has shied away from that. But I do believe that there's a shift. Do you believe that there's a shift?
A little bit. There was definitely a point in time where it was super bad. I'd say that 2019, maybe to 2022 is when things are crazy.
Yes.
But a little bit, I've noticed it, at least for what I could, because the people I've been around been a lot of the same mindset. So it's hard for me to really get a real good glimpse of the outside world. But yeah, I can sense
right?
a little
That
bit.
community for you has been really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so important. So, Richard, what do you say about that whole idea about the darkness and running into that? Because here you are, you're like a family man, you have all these kids, you're deeply committed to community, and yet you continue to go into that dark place to figure out your edges too. I mean, you haven't stopped that.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. I think you have to go there. Like what D'Angelo's saying, he would run, he'd do things. We go do a conditioning workout at 6 a.m., come home, and he'd go run 6 miles, 8 miles. 25 minutes later, in the afternoon, we go to the pool, right? He spends an hour in the pool. We're doing 3 a days for like 7 months, get him ready to go to Marine Corps boot camp, right? So he could rest at boot camp, right? Because it was
legit, right?
But no one,
Mm-hmm.
you tell people like they can't believe what he went through. And that was him. Obviously, I'm there to train him and push him. He understood that, just like boxing. Like I always said, there's 4 steps you take up to the ring, right? To get in the ring. They're the longest 4 steps you'll ever walk, because you're going to get in and take a beating. Okay. And I did that every day for years. I was like, I always just look and say, oh, here we go. But as soon as the bell rang, game on. Threw it on for 3, 5 rounds, 7 rounds. You do it, get out, do the workout. So it was that those 4 steps every day became my thing. Like, can you do it? Can you do it again tomorrow? Can you get beat up? Like, get my nose broke again. I got a black eye. I got this. And the next day I got to come back and do it again. And I just kept doing it, so I become a champion. It's the same thing. He's got the same mindset that there's things you have to persevere through, because the quitting is what should be what hurts. Almost disgraceful. Okay. So you have that mindset that like, I can fail, but I can't quit. Right. Big difference. I talk about it a lot now when I do my podcast. Failure is okay. It's a place where you learn. Quitting, that's a different mindset. Right. I don't even want to call it surrender. It's quitting. It's not a good thing. So you have to be able to persevere through that. And he saw it in the Corps this last year, whether it's in basic training or in SOI or MSG, all the stuff that he's done, he saw people quit. A lot of people quit.
Really?
Just didn't want to hump the hill, didn't want to get yelled at, didn't want to do this, didn't want to do that. And those guys had to live to that. They have to live with that the rest of their life. We kind of understand, like, it's worth the pain to be able to achieve what you set out to achieve.
What's that like? What was that like for you, D'Angelo, to see people quit?
It was like, first of all, in the Marine Corps, I was like, whoa. Especially after the Marines were like, that's definitely interesting. I didn't think you'd be able to do this. Especially reaching to the point where they did after going through all the boot camp. And that's why I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. You get guys that they can't do it. And it's just like, whoa. And I've never really had that quitter mentality. So whenever I saw, I was just like, well, that's not me. So.
Wow. Right. Exactly. Isn't that so true? Well, that's not me. It's like, I don't ever want to understand that. And I think that's part of the reason I have a challenge. And I talked to Richard about this. He's coached me through this a few times. But it's just, I grew up I'm one of 9 kids. I know you're the oldest in your crew, but I was so used to being adaptable to the other people that if people don't like me because I'm positive, or if I have a big energy, or I have a drive, or I'm doing things that are unusual, I'm like, why don't you like me? Like, it hurt my feelings, right? And it's still, but I don't want to be tough enough to be like, that doesn't hurt me. I just want to, and I mean that in a way of like, I would never be like that. I would never treat another person like that. Like you said, I'm not a quitter. I would never try to put and belittle someone, not ever. So that's the thing I don't ever want to understand. And so thank you for actually sharing that. That's a new spin for me from the feminine perspective of like, wow, that's why I'm so sensitive about it, because it will never be me.
No.
It will never be me. Oh, yeah, that's good. D'Angelo dropping the mic for Kate McKay.
Thank you. But even then, if you see someone quit, you can just use it as fuel for yourself.
Do you?
Well, that's not me. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit of pride that I get, that there's just a little bit.
No, it's good though.
He couldn't hang, but I did.
Yeah, I did.
There's some pride in that a little bit.
Right.
And even when you yourself are falling down that hole, like I'm quitting, and you develop a little bit of a victim mindset, you can turn that around on itself and use that as fuel on the fire. You just got to pull yourself out of there. Like, I thought about it, but no, I'm not going to let that. I'm not going to go down there. No, screw me for even thinking that in the first place. Right. I'm gonna prove myself wrong. So there's a lot of different directions. Yeah.
I think something else too, when we're running cross country and everything else, there's a big thing I had as a trainer. Training guys running. I ran cross country when I was in high school and everything too, but it was that approach to the finish line. Like, if I saw anyone slow down,
oh yeah,
before they cross the line. I mean, I'm talking if they're one step away and I see them, like, I
decelerate.
I lose my mind. Okay, like you run through the finish line, through it, right? And these people would you see them just running out of gas. You got 20 yards. You can do anything for 20 yards. Anything. I'm always passing people
at the end,
right? D'Angelo, same thing. You're battling for that place, and it might be 80th place, but you're battling for it.
Yes,
it doesn't matter if it's first place or 80th place. It doesn't matter. You're giving everything you have. Leave it on the course. You know what I mean? So I think D'Angelo's got that mentality as well, because we train it, right? Like, I think there's a big aspect of how you train when you do things on standards. We have standards in training, and there's expectations and things like that. So it's important that as he trained, as he did this stuff, that we were achieving these goals of the training. The outcomes in the actual events, they're going to be what they're going to be. But if we train to give everything we have, and that's what's going to alter the outcomes at the end to be what they're going to be. So it's understanding that when he's doing this, of whether they're humping the hill with 100 pounds on their back or swimming in the pool, whatever it is, it's that mindset that you've strengthened and developed. And that's what I see in him. I've watched it for years. The trainers just get stronger and stronger and stronger to be able to do these things. And then, like, the boxing was a big thing, right? Like, I encourage him, do you want to do maybe jujitsu? Do you want to do something else? Because I'm like, he's like, no, I really want to box. I'm like, okay, well, you got to tell your mother. Because she's gonna say it's all because of me and I want him to do it. So it was totally his choice. But you also love it. And I love the train him in boxing. I've been doing all this stuff and he did great. And it's these things, right? When you start to be drawn to those things, most people are not going to get in the ring and get punched in the face. It's a really small minority of people. I mean, I have plates and wires and new nose and all kinds of stuff. For me doing it, he didn't have to go through that. But he did it, though. You go through it. Now he takes it with him into the core and everything else. So I love watching the entire experience.
Yeah, it's like, who needs TV and movies when you can, like, live it vicariously? So from the place, and Richard, this is for you too, but D'Angelo, as you've pushed through these darker spots, these edges, and self-coach yourself through this path of mastery and excellence, how do you see that influencing and impacting your future? What
Uh,
calls you through that darkness?
what calls me? Well, I think it's a little bit of discipline, I'd have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But the lessons of discipline has definitely been installed in me by my father. Because I do believe that discipline is the strongest form of self-love that you can have
Mm-hmm.
for yourself. You know, doing something that sucks now for something even better later, you know. I think if you just have discipline, you can do pretty much almost anything, especially if you look back how far you come. It's like kind of winning's like climbing a staircase. You look back and whoa, look how far I've come. Why stop now? You know? And on
Mm-hmm.
the opposite side of that, you also got to learn what losing is, what it feels like to lose. Because if you can lose over and over and over again, but still get back up and try to win using, you know, some discipline aspects, you're a winner, even if
Mm-hmm.
you've lost so many times, you know.
Mm. So
But
how do you think that's going to affect your ability to lead others? Because I'm sure that's shifted for you too, going through what you've gone through and have increased confidence in the influence that you have on others.
yes, definitely.
Yeah. How do
I'm
you
def
see that developing and affecting others around you?
Well, I've definitely grown a lot more confidence from my past experience in just 1 year in the Marine Corps,
Mm,
leading others. I've been thrown in a lot of leadership positions since being in the Marine Corps. It's a lot to bear, but at the same time, you can only grow from it. If you're going to ask God for strength, for example, He's going to give you burdens to make you stronger. And the burden of having 4 or 5 guys underneath you, it's a lot to manage, but you'll come out better for it. I don't know how to really explain the experience. Sometimes you just
yeah,
got to
but
go
you
through
said
it,
it,
but
right? But I
it's
like the
awesome.
idea of you look at it that the burden is the responsibility, but it's just, but you ask for it. And
Hmm.
so you're going to lead from there and you don't take it lightly. Richard, what do you think of that?
Well, I think like what he's saying is everything's a training tool.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it is. Everything you endure, everything you're put into, it's always how you respond to it. You know, and I've watched D'Angelo rise with the proper response, to
Mm-hmm.
do those hard things, you know, and then we could spend hours just sharing stories on that kind of stuff. But again, having the opportunity to see it increment by increment, because you grow until you're not, well, leaders aren't born. People think they're born, they're not. People with grit are born with grit. Okay. All this stuff is things you develop. And only by putting yourself into those situations do you become good, better, great, all that kind of stuff, because you have to go through all the trials. And I think that's what D'Angelo understands. Like every level that he's gone through, from when he first started running as a little kid, all the way up into the Marine Corps, boxing, getting in that ring, you know, all the time, and sparring and doing the training. And it's just been every day is another advancement towards the new level, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
he's accomplished. So for me, I'm completely with him. It's like understanding that once you persevere through something, it's just a next level of endurance. You
Right.
know, you're never topped out.
Mm, mm. And so, where is the sense of fulfillment in that? If you guys could actually both, how do you measure? Because this is like kind of ridiculous. People like, oh, you know, you got to do what makes you happy. And I don't think that men are driven by happiness. I think it's a misconception. But how would you measure fulfillment or a job well done? What is that for you?
I'd have to say, looking back on it, the struggles and knowing that I overcame it and I came out better for it is that's an accomplishment for me. But also looking out for the future, a lot of things I do, at least I'm doing now, is for the benefit of not just myself, but my future family. Because a lot of things that I'm doing, like learning how to protect myself, I want to learn how to protect my future family, be it with my own bare hands or with a weapon. So a lot of the things I do, even if it's becoming smarter or becoming more athletic, like I said, bringing in the danger element of being able to protect, it's also for the future, the
Mm,
prolonging future. And knowing that also there's something further to actually strive for, you know, it helps, keeps me driven.
Yeah, that's the fulfillment in itself, to know that you're one step closer, that you're pushing through that finish line, like your dad says, like not just pushing through to that. It's very cool. What would you say to that, Richard?
Yeah, I agree. I think what's unique is when you're looking forward, really looking forward, and you're doing things now for down the road, whether that's 5 years from now or 10 years from now. A lot of times I didn't realize it when I was doing all that stuff. I was doing it to accomplish the thing. D'Angelo has a different mindset to have the ability to have that foresight.
Yeah, the forethought.
Right.
I was thinking that same thing.
To see that is really great because you can be even more purpose driven.
Way more. Yep.
Right. Where I was just doing it to achieve that. I wasn't thinking about the future. Now I look back again, I was able to raise them. So I started late, 39, when this young man came along. Right. So I had a lot of wisdom by then. And then the next 20 years, from there has been awesome because I've been able to share that wisdom. Because if this happened when I was 20, oh, what a disaster, right? No one wanted me raising kids when I was 20. So it's really great to see to really utilize that wisdom when I have, share with them, see him applying this stuff and every day. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've been totally noticing that, D'Angelo, that there's this concept, and I'm writing about it in the agility factor. And it's about agency, and agency being your ability to self-reflect and be able to look around and be like, all right, I'm not going to lose it. It's having that forethought, the intentionality, the ability to self-reflect, and also to future cast yourself in that present moment. And it sounds like you have a high level of agency, which requires a lot of self-work. And so I just want to commend you on the courage that even that process takes to do that. I'm looking forward to seeing you in your journey forward and what is going to show up. I'm going to keep an eye on you, and I'm obviously going to hear from your dad too. Is there anything that you in particular want to share with the audience about ways to develop a greater sense of fortitude and intentionality?
Do hard things, especially discipline. I stress that enough. A lot of people do not have any sort of discipline in their lives whatsoever. Once you start doing, for example, something you hate, if you actually do something you hate, that's miserable. Like go running, taking cold showers, you will find in that darkness, in that misery, what you actually love. So I feel like install some discipline in your life, do something you extremely dislike, and also on the other side of that, just do things that you're interested in.
It's so good. Richard, any parting words from you in this? This has been really, really amazing. It's like, okay, so he was the teacher.
Yeah, for sure. I'll agree with everything he said. I'm a big fan of doing hard things. We all need to put ourselves in those places. Also, I think people need to understand that it is the journey, right? There's always the next thing. People think if you've accomplished a lot, like they think you're done now. Like people talk to me, I'm like, well, I'm just feel like I'm getting going. Yeah. I've done a lot. I've done all this stuff, and from writing to performing, all the things. And I'm like, but there's so much more. You have to have that desire for more. You can't get comfortable. You can't get in autopilot. So just keep pushing. That's probably my biggest takeaway. That's what I see D'Angelo doing. Just again, having the ability to watch it, it's been just amazing.
And nurture it and water it and push into it and dig those ditches. Oh my gosh. Well, I just want to say thank you to both of you, badasses. Richard, thank you for sharing the time, and thank you for sharing your son and the stories about your son. And D'Angelo, thank you. Thank you for role modeling the way for not just your peers, but for others, and understanding that you doing what you're doing now, the hard things, people are watching, and God sees all that you're doing, and you're going to be richly rewarded in a really incredible, fulfilling life. So Yeah, stay humble and stay strong, warriors. Appreciate
Yes,
you
thank
both.
you. You too.
Yeah, right on. And thanks to all the viewers and listeners. How cool is this, father and son? I appreciate all you. And remember, you have greatness within you. Do those hard things. And if you're approaching that finish line, do not, under any circumstances, according to Richard Walsh, slow down. Push through to the end, people. Thank you so much. And until next time, be great, everyone.